Good morning, everyone. Happy second snow day. Today we're going to be working on Unit 4 LT9 notes, factoring the x with double roots. So when we're working with double roots, you get two factors that are the same, and you can write it as one factor squared. For example, you could get, let's do x plus 4 and x plus 4. When you have that, instead of writing that twice, you can just write it one time and then put the squared after it. So that's what the double roots are. So let's start with this first one right here. So we have x squared plus 10x plus 25. Remember, we always start with our a and we multiply that times our c. So if there's no number in front of your a, it's really a 1, and then you multiply that by your c, which is your 25. And then you draw your x in. 1 times 25 is 25. Make my pen just a little bit more narrow. And then our 10 goes on bottom. Well, when we think of what factors that go into 25, I know 1 and 25, and this is our 25, and then 5 and 5. So when I look at those, I know the two that will add up to that 10 are that 5 and that 5. So I'm going to put a 5 here and a 5 here. Now remember, we're going to take what's in the middle here, and we're going to replace that with our 10x. So I'm going to rewrite my whole thing. So I'm going to say 1x squared. Instead of 10x, I'm going to write plus 5x plus 5x, and then I'm going to end with my c, plus 25. And then remember, we group these two and group these two and figure out what's in common here and what's in common here. So between 1x and 5x, I have an x in common, and between 5 and 5, I have a 5 in common. And I kind of taught you earlier the fast way to do this. So we can look at this first piece right here, and I can say x plus 5 is my first set. And then I'm going to look at what's in that first piece, and I'm going to divide out this and divide out this, and that's going to be my second set of parentheses. So 1x divided by x is still going to give me an x, or 1x squared divided by x still gives me an x, and 5x divided by x is going to give me that 5, and it's positive. So notice that we have x plus 5 and x plus 5, and because they're the same, we can just say x plus 5 and square it. Okay, so let's try another one. So here we have x squared minus 14x plus 49. So I'm going to go ahead and take my a times my c and get that top. Remember, there's no number in front, so it's just 1 times that positive 49. So that's going to give me a 49. And then in my middle, my b value is that negative 14. So negative 14 goes on the bottom. Okay, so I'm thinking of 49, and I know 1 and 49. And you can look at your factor chart for these two, and I'll attach that to your homework. And the only factors that go in there are 1 and 49 and 7 and 7. Okay, so when I look at those, I need a negative 14. So I'm positive on top, but I'm negative on the bottom. Well, 2 negatives make that positive, and 2 negatives also make a bigger negative. So all of these have to be negatives. So the only thing that's going to make that negative 14 is this negative 7 and this negative 7. So I'm going to put a negative 7 here and a negative 7 here. Then I'm going to rewrite out, so 1x squared minus 7x, and then minus another 7x. And then I'm going to end with that plus 49, which is my c value. Then I'm going to chunk them. So I'm going to take these first two and those second two, see what's in common here and what's in common here. Okay, between 1x squared and a negative 7x, the only thing in common is an x. Okay, notice when you are at the second one, we have a negative starting right there. So because we have that negative starting, we're going to take a negative out right away. So a negative 7 and a 49 both have a 7 in common. Okay, now we're just going to do the fast way. So I'm going to take that first thing, and I'm going to say x minus 7. That's one of mine. Okay, and now I'm going to look at this piece right here and divide out. So I'm going to say 1x squared divided by x, and that's going to give me an x. And then negative 7x divided by divided by x is going to give me a negative 7. So I have x minus 7 and x minus 7. So I'm going to change that to x minus 7 squared. Okay, let's try another one here. Okay, we're going going to keep doing the same thing. So I have 4x squared plus 4x plus 1. Remember, we always start with taking our a times our c value. I had to get all the way there, but times our c value. So I'm going to start with making my x. 4 times 1 is 4. And then because my b, my 4 is in the middle, I'm also going to have a 4 in the middle. Okay, so I'm thinking of all my factors of 4. I know 1 times 4 and 2 times 2. Okay, they're all positive, so these all can stay positive. What multiplies to 4 but adds to 4 is 2 and 2. So I'm going to put a 2 here and a 2 here. Okay, now I'm going to rewrite, and this middle piece right here, I'm going to replace this 4x with. Okay, so I'm going to start with 4x squared plus 2x plus 2x, and then I'm going to end with my c value. So now I have those. I'm going to take these two and these two, 4x squared and 2x, they both have a 2x in common. And a 2x and 1, they both have a 1 in common. So the first thing I can do is use that bottom piece right here, and that can be my first. So I'm going to say 2x plus 1, and it's all positive because I don't have any negatives, okay? And then I'm going to take that second piece, and I'm just going to divide out whatever I can divide out of there. Okay, so 4x divided by 2, 4x squared divided by 2x is going to give me a 2x. And then 2x divided by 2x is going to give me a positive 1. And when you look at those, I have 2x plus 1 and 2x plus 1. So I'm going to say 2x plus 1 squared. Okay, so let's look at number 4. Okay, so if there's no number in front, there's really a 1. So I have a 1 there. So I'm going to take this 1 times all of this. Okay, so that's a negative 42. So 1 times negative 42, that's going to give me a negative 42 on top. And on the bottom, if there's no number in front of this middle piece right here, there's really a 1. And because I have a negative in front of it, it's going to be a negative 1. So I'm going to put a negative 1 right there. Okay, so now I'm thinking of all the factors of just a 42. We can change our negatives in a minute. So I know 1 and 42. I know 2 and 21. 3 and 14. And 6 and 7. Okay, so now if my top and my bottom are both negative, it means that just one of them are negative, and it's going to be my bigger one that's negative. Well, two numbers that if you add or subtract together that are going to make that negative 1 are that 6 and negative 7. So I'm going to put a 6 here and a negative 7 there. And now these two pieces are going to replace that right there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start with my 1x squared plus 6x minus 7x and then minus 42. And then I'm going to chunk these two and chunk these two. Okay, 1x and 6x, they both have an x in common. Okay, and when I look at the second piece, notice that it starts with this negative, so we have to go ahead and take a negative out right away. So I'm going to take that negative out. A 7 and a 42 both have a 7 in common. Okay, so when we look at that, we're going to use that bottom piece right there as our first set of parentheses. So I'm going to take that and make that a x minus 7, okay? And then I'm going to take the second piece, and I'm just going to divide out what I can out of here. So 1x squared divided by x is going to give me an x, and a 6x divided by 6 is going to give me an x. So 6x divided by x is going to give me a 6 right there. Okay, when I look at these, I have x minus 7 and x plus 6. Those are not the same, so that's not a double root. So I'm just going to leave that one as is. Okay, we're going to try a couple more of these. So I'm going to take my a times my c. So my 2 times my 7, and I get 14. So on the top, I'm going to put a 14 and a 9 on the bottom. And I'm thinking factors of 14. I know 1 and 14, 2 and 7. Okay, Okay, all of these are positive, so everything can remain positive. The only thing that makes that 14 are that 2 and that 7. So I'm going to put a 2 here, 7 here. I'm going to rewrite 2x squared plus 2x plus 7x plus 7. I'm going to chunk these two. Okay, 2x and 2x both have a 2x in common. And a 7x and a 7 both have a 7 in common. This bottom piece is going to turn into my first set. So I'm going to say 2x plus 7, and it's all positive. And then my second piece I'm going to pull out of right there. So 2x divided by 2x, 2x squared divided by 2x is going to be just an x, and 2x divided by 2x is going to give me a 1. Okay, when I look at those, I have 2x plus 7 and x plus 1. Those are not the same, so I'm not going to square anything. Okay, let's try one more of these, and then we're going to move on to something a little bit different. Okay, so I'm going to take my a times my c. So 1 times 3 is 3. And my b goes on bottom. There's a negative in front, so it's going to be a negative 4. So I'm thinking of everything that multiplies to 3. Well, the only options are 1 and 3. Okay, I noticed that my top is positive and my bottom is negative. 2 negatives make that positive on top, but 2 negatives make that bigger negative on the bottom. So I'm going to say a negative 1 and a negative 3. I'm going to rewrite these. So 1x squared minus 1x minus 3x plus 3. And group those and group these. 1x squared and 1x both have an x in common. When I look at the second piece, I notice that I have a negative right here, so I'm going to go ahead and take a negative out right away. So I know this is going to be a negative something. A negative 3 and 3 both have a 3 in common. I'm going to look at those and know that this is going to be my first set. So my first one's going to be x minus 3. My second one is going to be whatever I can pull out of right there. Okay, so 1x squared divided by x still gives me an x, and negative 1x divided by x is going to give me a negative 1. Okay, when I look at those, they are not the same, so I do not have double roots on this one. So I'm just going to leave my answer as x minus 3 times x minus 1. Okay, so not every trinomial can be factored. If the x is not solvable, the trinomial is not factorable. This is called relatively prime. So if you find something that you can't figure out what multiplies to the top but adds to the bottom, if there's no factors that would do that, that's going to be a relatively prime number, or we can just label it as RP. So let's try a couple of those. Okay, so when I look at these two, I'm going to do the exact same method that I was doing before. I'm going to take my A times my C. So 1 times 4 is 4, and then my B goes on bottom, so my 2 goes on bottom. So now I'm thinking of my factors of 4. So I know 1 times 4 and 2 times 2. Well, remember, they're all going to have to be positive because my 4 and my 2 are positive already. But when I look at that, if I do 1 and 4, 1 plus 4 is 5, and 2 plus 2 is 4. None of that will add up to this bottom 2. Okay, so this one would be a relatively prime number. Okay, when you don't have factors that will multiply to the top but add to the bottom, it turns into relatively prime. Let's try another one of those. So when I look at this one, I'm going to have 1 times 5. 1 times 5 is 5. So on my top is a 5, and my bottom is going to be a 3. Okay, when I think of my 5s, I know 1 times 5. And that's it. Okay, they're all positive. Well, 1 plus 5 is 6. So they multiply to the top, but they will not add to that bottom piece. This is not a 6, so that will not work. So this one also is going to be relatively prime. There's a few factors that work that way, and only a few on your assignment too. So make sure you check all your factors before you label it relatively prime. And this last one is a word problem. We're not going to work on that one. So you can skip number 9 on your notes, and then whatever that is on the word problem on the homework, you can skip as well. But you are all set to do LT9 notes from here. Thanks for watching.